The week's end top stories at NBR. Murray Bolton can self-isolate at home. Dr. Alan Bollard on APEC, a green shipping venture, and there's more coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR This Week. We start with a wrap of the end of the week's top business stories from the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz. Then we'll take a look back at the top NBR Today stories from the past week. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks again for joining us. NBR listener Murray Bolton can self-isolate at home after an overseas business trip after the government reconsidered its previous refusal in light of his successful High Court challenge. MB only changed its mind in my case because I had the time and the resources to fight my rights in court, said Bolton. That's great for me, but most Kiwis don't have that level of privilege, whether they're trying to get home to be reunited with their families or travelling for business opportunities that are critical to New Zealand's post-pandemic economic recovery. They shouldn't have to lawyer up and get a fair hearing from officials. Returns for the bulk of KiwiSaver funds dropped below 1% in the September quarter as economic momentum in the US and China slowed. Morningstar Director of Manager Research for APAC, Tim Murphy, says, and there are few signs of any impact on in- and outflows of funds for different providers ahead of coming changes to the default KiwiSaver provider program effective next month. Morningstar's latest KiwiSaver research, released today, Friday, found that in the September quarter, average category returns ranged from 0.2% for conservative funds to 0.9% in growth. That was a marked slowdown from the June quarter, when average returns ranged from 1.6% for the conservative category to 5.9% for the aggressive sector. Leaders of Asia-Pacific economies will meet virtually in New Zealand late next week as they try to give renewed impetus to the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Group. Lately, APEC has lost momentum, and there's hope that New Zealand's chairing of the group this year has given it back some of its gravitas. Someone who should know is former Reserve Bank Governor Dr. Alan Bollard, who was also Executive Director of the APEC Secretariat from 2013 to 18. In that job, he had an inside view of how APEC worked. Alan Bollard joined the NBR's political editor, Brent Edwards.
Last year was Malaysia, and Malaysia hasn't really had the political strength and stability to be able to carry the thing through. So I think there were quite a few economies looking to New Zealand and saying, you've got to get the thing back on track, or we don't know where this is going to go.
Executive Director of the APEC Secretariat from 2013 to 2018, Dr. Alan Bollard with Brent Edwards there. Best known for trucking, NZX-listed Move Logistics has entered the shipping space with its Move Oceans venture, which will eventually offer a green alternative to road transport. In September, the company chartered MV Anatoki to carry a load of water pipes from Whanganui to Canterbury. While this move didn't add any capacity to New Zealand's underserviced coastal shipping space, Executive Director Chris Dunphy said the ship took multiple heavy trucks off New Zealand's roads. He said the shipping service, which will operate a regular service through secondary ports such as Whanganui, Nelson and New Plymouth, wasn't planning on going head-to-head with any existing players, but rather servicing its own volume. Those are our top stories as we head into the weekend, the full versions of which, along with all our breaking business news, columns and opinion, are at nbr.co.nz right now. This is NBR This Week, a brief look back now at the week's top stories from our daily business news bulletin, NBR Today. On Monday, resistance from grocery companies. Foodstuffs and Woolworths have dismissed suggestions for structural separation and asset divestments as extreme and unreasonable remedies to competition issues that they believe have been overblown. The grocery companies continue to downplay the existence of a duopoly in the grocery market during another session of the Commerce Commission's Grocery Market Study Conference today, Monday, centred on potential operational and structural separation and divestment of parts of their businesses. Representatives of both companies put heavy disclaimers on their discussion of the topic today, Monday, saying much more cost-benefit analysis work would need to be done by the Commission before such topics could even be debated properly. They said separation, either operational or structural, of wholesale and retail businesses would be costly and result in higher unit costs, as would divestment of any assets. It's NBR This Week, the week's top stories from our daily video business news bulletin, NBR Today. From Tuesday, the RBNZ says house prices unsustainable. The Reserve Bank has provided its most detailed analysis yet on why it considers house prices unsustainable and a risk to the stability of the financial system. In a speech to the Property Council's virtual retail conference today, Tuesday, the day before the delivery of its six-monthly financial stability report, Bank Governor Adrian Orr said the two sources of this risk were the inability of housing supply to respond in a timely fashion to changes in demand and drivers that bias investment choices towards housing. Simple but not easy solutions to these issues are being implemented, Orr said, but these do not include using interest rates to target house prices. This is not our mandate, nor does it make sense, he said. This is NBR This Week, the past week's top 5 business stories from NBR Today. From Wednesday, anti-COVID product from startup. A dairy-based product being developed by a Waikato startup has the potential to offer immune support against COVID-19. Ruakura Technologies has proved the concept and lodged a patent for its technology and is now seeking investors to take the business to the next level. In collaboration with Waikato University, the Ruatech team has designed coronavirus antigens that create COVID-blocking antibodies in animal milk. Joining the NBR's Maria Slade was Ruakura Technologies' Steve Hodgkinson.
You could immunise the pregnant animal and have specific antibodies against the antigen or vaccine that you're interested in, also expressed in the milk. Now, that principle is really useful because it can be applied as a technology for producing protective antibodies.
This is NBR This Week, a brief look back at the week's top stories from our daily business NBR Today news bulletin. From Thursday, Build to Rent scheme launched. KIWISAVER provider Simplicity has launched a build-to-rent scheme with the aim of following the European model and investing a chunk of its funds in the asset class. Simplicity has joined forces with house builder NZ Living to create Simplicity Living. Construction is underway on its first 2 projects, a 132-unit development in the East Auckland suburb of Point England and a 60-unit site a few kilometres away in Oranga. Joining the NBR's Maria Slade was Sam Stubbs of Simplicity.
We have some pretty ambitious goals here. We're starting off with our first, 100 plus apartments in these 2 developments, but our intention ultimately is, like a European pension fund, to have between 5 to 20% of our money invested in this asset class. That's quite typical over in Europe and the States for a big pension fund. What that will ultimately mean is thousands of homes.
This is NBR This Week. Now we're up to Friday's top story. Spark Group is consulting with its employees in retail and essential services roles about moving to a requirement for those roles to be vaccinated, according to the telco's chair, Justine Smith. Speaking at Friday's virtual AGM, Smith said the company had completed a thorough health and safety risk environment across the business to understand the risk profile of different working environments. This assessment has shown we have higher risks of COVID in some areas of our business, such as our retail teams and our essential service teams, who are not able to perform their roles remotely. She said potentially requiring vaccinations among staff would keep our people safe, our partners and customers safe, and our essential services online. You've been watching and listening to our review of the week's top 5 NBR Today stories. You can find the full versions of those stories and more, along with all our daily breaking business news, columns and opinion at nbr.co.nz right now. Saturday at NBR, In Fact or Fiction, Grant Walker and Brent Edwards discuss climate change, unemployment and the COVID catch-22, while on Sunday, Brent Sheether argues investors should seek shares for income when interest rates are low. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks for watching NBR This Week. Have a great weekend. I look forward to being with you again from Monday on NBR Today.